Away you go.
Good afternoon, everybody, and my name's Louise Martin. I'm the Young Persons Advisor for the Children in Need team. And what I generally do is work with young people aged 16 to 19 who are known as NEET, which means not in education, employment and training. And part of my job role is to work with those young people to raise their aspirations and overcome problems that they have so that they can meet their objective, which is often to find employment, apprenticeship, that type of thing. So today, the aims of today is so that you feel quite competent to do a CV. We're going to create one at some point later on today. So we're going to look at examples of CVs. What are good CVs, what are bad CVs, how to overcome your confidence with writing CVs, and move on from there. Okay. So, first of all, what is the purpose of a CV? So what would you feel is the purpose of doing a CV?
To give a prospective employer a very simplified background to you and your experiences or qualifications.
Okay. Anything else as to why you would need a CV? What's important about a
Job
CV?
application.
Job application. And if you think about the question, what is the purpose? How would you answer that? What is the actual purpose of a CV? To give information?
To sell your skills and knowledge to potential employers.
Is there? Any others?
Evidence experience.
Yeah, evidence of experience.
Employability. The degree of employment.
Okay, they're all very good examples about what the purpose of the CV is. But the actual purpose of having a CV is this one. Is to get an interview. That is the purpose of having a CV. There's no right or wrong way of how to do a CV. If you went into a different class, another tutor would probably tell you to do it one way. Somebody else would tell you to do it another way. So what we're going to look at first of all today is an example of a CV. And what I want you to do is just to go through the CV and highlight what you think is not good about this CV, okay?
Not good.
Yeah.
No.
How are you doing? You finding lots of mistakes?
Take it, I didn't get a job.
Are you all done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you could just all turn them over to the front for me. Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. Because one of the things that I've noticed just walking around Janice has done it. On the wrong bit again. I don't know how well you can see that. I've noticed Janice has done it on her CV, is to start off with the very top, which is quite an often mistake that young people make when they're doing CVs, is this punctuation and the use of capital letters. So I've highlighted in red changes really that need to be made. So obviously capital letters when you're writing streets and locations down. Marital status and sex, I don't think they're two things that need to be mentioned on a CV. It's not really relevant when you're applying for a job, and neither what sexuality you are either. The email address is quite an often common problem that I have whilst working with young people, is when you're 15, 16 and you're with your friends, it's quite fun to have quite an outlandish, email address. I've had lots of things like chocolatepoo.com and lots of different really inappropriate email addresses. Quite often now with job applications, a lot of jobs specify for you to email your CV. So obviously you've got to think about having an appropriate email address, because if that lands in an employer's inbox with Foxy Boy, already his first impression of you is it's not going to be very professional. So you really need to make sure that you have an appropriate email address. Next, photograph, again, not appropriate really to put a picture of yourself. You're selling yourself as a person, not what you look like, to get the job. As we scroll down, a lot, again, at the top is about grammar. But the job description for barman, obviously you all got very good common sense. Writing that you left the job because of the disagreement with the manager is not an appropriate thing to write. And that you became familiar with a range of products as well, that's not really appropriate to write that in a CV. And it does happen.
I see, now I read that. I just thought, oh, that is what you would do.
Yeah.
You would, but I suppose you're that way. You and me, he tried them.
Yeah.
I didn't read it like that. I thought, yeah, you would get to know all the products.
Training again, not good to highlight the negative points. I've got 7 on your driving licence, especially if you're applying for a job that involves driving. That's not really going to help you get the job there. Interest as well. Again, there's spelling mistakes, quite a few spelling mistakes in there. But hanging out with friends and going to the pub, again, doesn't create a good impression of what your real interests are. I'm sure a lot of you are members of teams and schools that you could put down after school activities, some really interesting things about your own personal hobbies, rather than going to the pub and just hanging out with friends. References, last thing to note there, you cannot have family members as a referee for you. You have to have somebody professional, somebody that you've known for 5 years. I appreciate 16, 17 is quite difficult to have a most recent employer to put down, but quite often schools will allow you to put down their form 2 ahead of year, things like that. You may know a doctor in the family or a police officer or somebody with a profession that you could use as well. So I'm just going to hand out, again, this is not saying this is the right way, but what would have been a better CV and content to have used rather than what was we've just looked up there.
Thank you.
So when you're writing a CV, your personal profile, that's the opportunity that you have to really sell yourself to an employer. Personal profile is about 6-7 lines of what your skills and your strengths are. An employer will take about 3 seconds to decide whether your CV goes in a yes or no pile. So this is your real opportunity to sell yourself and sell your skills to an employer. Work experience again, when you're writing about your work experience, write a couple of lines about what your actual job involved doing. So if you write down that you worked in a retail shop, you really need to highlight the skills that you used to do that job, so replenishing stocks and customers, not going into paragraphs, but just highlighting what skills that you've learned doing that job. Education, again, the most recent one at the top, and highlight all of your education and training that you've had whilst at school and what when leaving school, and interests as well. So that is a better example of Mr. Noel Lakeman's CV. However, I do have a CV template that I do use with young people, which I feel is more of a professional way to lay out CV. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the young people that I work with who have used this template system, who have been unemployed for a little while, have been job hunting, haven't been able to find work, have done a CV using this template and they've actually got work from it. Okay. So that again is just showing an example of what Mr. Edmonds' CV, how much more professional that looks. So do you all agree that yeah? Is there any questions, anything anyone wants to ask about the layout of CV?
How long should a CV be?
A CV should be double-sided, really.
So is two like this?
Well, I use one A4 paper back to back. That's how I use.
So you would probably do a smaller font to get this.
The reason you've got 2 sheets there is because I put some examples of phrases that you can use in your personal profile, and also just key skills as well, what points that you could use in there. It is difficult as you get older, you get more experience, more qualifications, to try and keep your CV, you know, to 2 pages. Shouldn't use the same CV to apply for every single job. You should adapt your CV to each job that you apply for. And really make your CV stand out. So we just said not to make your CV the same every time. Also research the company that you're applying for as well. Companies are quite impressed when obviously you get to interview stage that you know a lot of history and things about the company that you're applying for. When you've done a professional CV, which is something that we're going to do shortly on the computers, is produce a professional CV for you. Go that extra mile with your CV. Go to the shop that you want to apply for, ask to speak to the manager and give out your CV. Don't just send it through the post. If you have to send it through the post, use a different coloured envelope. You know, that HR officer is going to have a pile of 50, 100 CVs that they're going to open. Put yours in a pink or an orange one to make yours stand out in the pile. If you're applying for a job at a sports shop, put your CV in a box with a little tennis ball and put a post-it note on it saying good team player. Do little things like that, anything that's going to make your CV stand out, okay? I have got examples of covering letters as well, which I'm going to give you. Again, covering letters are really good to send out with your CV. It's going that extra mile again to make your CV stand out. So an employer doesn't think, oh, I've just got CV through the post, you know, they're not really that interested. If you put a covering letter in about why you're applying, why you really want the job, what skills you have, it's going to make your CV stand out a lot better to an employer than just putting a CV in the post. So I'm going to give you a handout for some examples of some covered letters. I'm also going to give you some handouts, useful tips about preparing a CV. Okay? So that's just a quick overview of the lesson today. So has anybody got any questions or anything they'd like to ask? Has today's information raised your awareness about what a CV is?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you feel confident about doing a CV yourself and what content you need to put in that CV?
Yeah. It's good to get an example of a bad one and a good one, so
Yeah,
you can see where you're going to go
Yeah.
wrong and to see, because I wouldn't have thought, I mean, I would never put photo on, but when I saw it, I didn't even think anything of it. And actually, you're right, it isn't appropriate, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think that piece of information about doing something to stand out.
Yeah.
So
Colour
that's
temperature
a really
is
good
good.
idea.
And a text board. and
Yeah.
lots of
It's a really good
classic
idea.
idea.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
done.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about the old key.